It was supposed to be just another morning. Sunlight spilled lazily across the sleepy streets of Willow Ridge, a quiet suburban town where lawns were always trimmed, and trouble wore a polite smile. At 7:46 a.m., Derek Lane, 39 years old, ex-military, paraplegic and part-time motivational speaker, wheeled himself into his black Ford Explorer, parked in a designated handicap space outside the local grocery store. He'd done this same routine for over 3 years. Roll down the ramp from his modified front porch, secure himself into the driver's seat using the custom swivel base, stow his wheelchair behind him, and begin his day. What he didn't know was that less than 20 minutes later, he'd be facing a loaded gun and an officer screaming at him to get out of the car. Derek had never been arrested, never raised his voice to authority. He still wore the scar from the IED that had shredded his lower spine in Afghanistan. But what he was about to endure, what the world was about to witness, would shake every corner of that town's quiet pride. It began with a routine traffic stop, a tail light flickering, an officer with a badge, and a belief that Derek, who couldn't even feel his legs, was non-compliant. The officer didn't ask questions. He gave commands. Step out of the vehicle. Derek tried to explain. Calmly, clearly, I'm paralyzed. I can't walk. But that didn't matter. Not when you're a black man in America sitting behind the wheel of a large vehicle, not moving fast enough, not obeying quick enough, not looking disabled enough. The dashcam caught it all. The voice of the officer, raised and impatient. The crack of his baton striking the side mirror. The shaky, terrified voice of Derek saying again, "Sir, I physically cannot step out." Then the unthinkable happened. The door was yanked open. The officer reached in. And Derek Lane, decorated veteran, father of 2, full-time wheelchair user, was pulled from the driver's seat, his body thudding against the pavement like discarded luggage. Moments later, a second officer arrived. The silence between them was damning. They saw the crumpled chair in the back, the hand controls near the wheel, the paralyzed man now groaning on the ground, barely able to breathe. And for the first time, that morning shift officer, badge number 3712, realized what he had just done. But it was too late. What followed was not a protest. It wasn't a march. It was quieter, more powerful. A lawsuit, a body cam leak, a media firestorm, and a federal investigation that went far deeper than anyone expected, exposing not just one officer's ignorance, but an entire department's culture of unchecked power. And Derek? He didn't raise his fist. He didn't yell. He just told the truth, again and again, with the kind of quiet strength that doesn't need volume to make its point. By the time it was over, a department would fall. A badge would be stripped. And a man the world tried to dismiss as less than would walk away with something more powerful than vengeance. Dignity. Justice. And a story that made the whole country ask. How many others were told, "You don't look paralyzed to me"? Don't scroll past this story. It's not just powerful, it's real. Make sure to subscribe and watch till the end to see the shocking turn that got a cop fired and a paralyzed man finally heard. The sun had barely climbed above the flat Texas horizon when Derek Lane rolled his van into the parking lot of the Silver Creek Market, a small grocery store off Highway 12. The air was still, thick with humidity, and the scent of diesel lingered from passing trucks. Derek was up early to beat the heat, the same way he did every Friday. Groceries for the week, some fresh air, and just maybe a quiet moment alone before the rest of the world stirred. His van was specially outfitted. After the accident 5 years ago, an oil rig collapse that had crushed his spine and severed his mobility below the waist, his life had changed in ways most people couldn't begin to understand. But Derek adapted. Learned how to drive again with hand controls. Learned how to live again from a seated height. Learned how to hold his head high even when people talked to him like he was broken. He parked in the handicapped space closest to the door, double-checked the placard on his dashboard, and turned off the engine. As he reached for the ramp release, a squad car pulled in behind him, its lights off but presence unmistakable. Derek noticed it out of the corner of his eye. Most people would have ignored it. He didn't. An officer stepped out. Stocky. Square jaw. Crew cut. Sunglasses even though the sun hadn't broken fully over the horizon. His name tag read, W. Graves. Derek took a breath. He'd had encounters like this before, most were routine. But something about the way this officer moved, the aggressive precision of his stride, the way he unclipped his holster as he approached, it didn't feel like a routine check. Graves rapped on the driver's window. License and registration. Derek rolled the window down halfway. Morning, officer. Sure, it's in the glove box. Just a heads up, I'm a paraplegic. I'll need a second to reach across. Graves didn't nod. Didn't blink. Just said, step out of the vehicle. Derek froze. I can't. Like I said, I'm paralyzed from the waist down. I use this. He gestured toward the hand controls and the folded wheelchair strapped behind the seat. Graves' eyes narrowed. You refusing a lawful order? No, sir. I'm explaining that I physically cannot exit the vehicle unless my chair is unloaded, and even then. I'm not playing games, Graves barked. You will exit the vehicle, or you will be removed. Derek's throat went dry. His hand hovered near the ignition. He knew better than to make sudden moves. Officer, please, I'm not resisting. I'm trying to comply. Graves reached for his radio. Possible 10 to 35. Suspect not complying. Might be under influence. Derek's stomach turned. Under the influence? He hadn't had so much as an aspirin in 48 hours. But now the box was checked. Suspicion. An accusation that could spiral into danger. He spoke slowly. Sir, if you open the back, I can show you my chair. My medical card is... Hands on the dash. Derek complied instantly, both palms up. His breathing grew shallow. That was when Graves opened the driver's side door, yanked at Derek's arm, and met dead weight. What the hell? He muttered, his grip tightening. Get out. I told you I can't move my legs. Then maybe this'll help, Graves snarled, reaching behind Derek's seat to yank the wheelchair out with one hand and letting it clatter to the pavement like scrap metal. Derek winced, not from pain, but from humiliation. That chair cost over $3,000. More than that, it was his freedom. Another officer arrived, drawn by the radio call. She stepped out of her car slowly, eyes scanning the scene. What's going on, Graves? Graves pointed at Derek. Non-compliance. Possible narcotics. The second officer, a younger woman, badge name Vesquez, looked at Derek, at the crumpled wheelchair on the pavement, at the sweat gathering on his temple. Is he armed? No, Graves snapped. She approached the van, looked inside. Her eyes flicked from the modified steering to the medical ID card dangling from the rearview. She looked back at Graves. Are you seriously trying to pull him out? He's faking it. Vesquez raised an eyebrow. Faking paraplegia? Graves didn't answer. Derek turned his head toward her, desperation inching into his voice. Ma'am, I'm just trying to go to the store. I've been disabled for 5 years. You can check the state registry. My ID. Enough, Graves barked, stepping forward again. But Vesquez raised a hand. Step back, Graves. A tense silence passed. That was the first break in the storm. Within minutes, paramedics were called, not because Derek needed them, but because Vesquez insisted on verifying medical condition before allowing further force. Derek sat quietly, shaking, while a young EMT confirmed his paralysis, his records, and his rising blood pressure. Graves stormed off to his cruiser. Vesquez stayed behind, helped Derek retrieve his chair from the pavement, apologized with a soft, "This shouldn't have happened." Derek didn't answer, because in his gut, he knew something darker had just begun. The cameras from the grocery store had caught it all. So had a bystander with a phone. And within hours, the story would go national. But what no one knew, not even Derek, was that Graves had a record. One that had been buried deep. And this time, it was about to resurface. Derek Lane sat still. Not because he was calm, but because that was all he could do. The sharp bark of Officer Graves still echoed in his ears. I said, get out of the car. But how do you obey an order your body refuses to follow? The engine was off. His registration and license rested on the passenger seat, exactly where he'd placed them the moment the flashing lights appeared in his rearview mirror. He had done everything right. And yet, it still wasn't enough. Through the open window, Derek's voice emerged, calm but firm. "Officer, I am paralyzed from the waist down. I can't get out of the vehicle." There was a beat of silence. It should have been the moment Graves took a breath and adjusted course. But he didn't. Graves scoffed, stepped back, and barked to his partner. "He's resisting. We're gonna have to remove him." Derek's pulse surged. "Resisting?" he repeated, almost laughing in disbelief. "You just heard me. I'm paralyzed. I said exit the vehicle." Graves roared again, and this time, he reached for the door handle. The female officer, Officer Marisol Vega, a newer recruit with 3 years on the force, moved closer. Her hand touched her colleague's arm lightly. "Wait, let me handle this. Something's not right." But Graves shook her off. His pride, puffed up by adrenaline and the need to assert dominance, overrode any reason. "Back up, Vega. This is non-compliance." The door flung open. Derek gripped the steering wheel with both hands, terrified. "Don't touch me." Too late. Graves reached in, grabbing Derek under the arm. The moment his hand made contact, Derek screamed. Not in pain, yet, but in anger. In fear. In the raw helplessness only a man trapped in his own body could feel. Graves yanked hard. But Derek's body didn't move like others. The officer's force did nothing but send Derek awkwardly sideways, causing his head to hit the edge of the steering wheel with a sickening thud. His legs dangled uselessly. His upper body slumped. "Stop. He told you he can't move." Vega's voice cut sharply, but Graves was locked in. The commotion drew attention. A nearby pedestrian froze on the sidewalk. A teenager, phone already out, pressed record. "Somebody help." Derek cried out, dazed now. "I'm a disabled man." Then came the second blow. Graves shoved Derek backward to the pavement, his torso twisting unnaturally as it dropped from the van seat. Derek landed with a heavy thud, head bouncing once, legs sprawled motionless. His back twisted at an angle no human body should ever bend. He gasped for air. His ribs screamed. And for a few seconds, he couldn't speak at all. The grocery store manager came running outside. "Jesus Christ, what are you doing? That man can't walk." That's when Graves paused. Not out of empathy, but because he realized just how many phones were now pointed at him. Vega knelt down, checking Derek's pulse and breath. Her hands trembled. "Sir, stay with me. Can you hear me?" Derek blinked, tears streaming down his temples into the concrete. He mouthed something. "What?" She leaned in. "I told him." Then, everything faded to black. Derek woke up in a hospital room, a tube in his nose and a monitor beeping rhythmically beside him. His sister, Trina Lane, stood by the bed. Eyes red, face pale. She gripped his hand like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "You're okay. You're gonna be okay." "What happened?" "They slammed you on the ground." "The one from the footage." He blinked, slow and careful. "Footage?" Trina nodded. "There were cameras. Store cameras. Bystander videos. It's already online. All of it. People are furious." A nurse entered. She whispered something to Trina, then to Derek. "Mr. Lane, you may have additional spinal damage. They're still running tests." His lips parted, but he said nothing. Not more damage. Not again. He had lived 13 years in a wheelchair after the accident. He had adapted, fought, rebuilt his life. And now, this? For doing nothing? That night, across social media, the video went viral by 7 p.m. The hashtags exploded. Hashtag justice for Derek. Hashtag he told them. Hashtag paralyzed not powerless. Every major news outlet picked up the story by morning. Civil rights attorneys, disability rights advocates, medical experts. They all weighed in. The headlines were clear. Paralyzed man dragged from car by cop after explaining he couldn't walk. Police use force on disabled driver, caught on camera. Missouri officer under fire after assaulting paraplegic man. Chief Hollander, stone-faced behind a podium, addressed a storm of reporters. The department has placed Officer Graves on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. We are cooperating fully with oversight authorities. But the cameras didn't want statements. They wanted accountability. They wanted to know, how does a man explain his disability, clearly, and still get treated like a threat? His lawyer, Malik Thomas, entered with files in hand. "I've seen a lot of cases, Mr. Lane," he said gently, "but yours? This one's different. This one's going to change things." Derek nodded faintly. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to go home." "I know. But sometimes, justice doesn't knock. It breaks through." Outside the window, more reporters waited. Signs were already being waved. But Derek didn't want crowds or attention. He wanted one thing: accountability. And for the first time in years, it wasn't just a whisper in the wind. It was coming. That evening, Officer Vega sat alone in her apartment. Her phone buzzed with an anonymous message. A file attachment. She opened it. It was body cam footage. The uncut version. What she saw next made her gasp, and realize Graves had lied in his report. And worse, he wasn't alone. There were names. And Vega now held the proof that could blow the entire case wide open. Derek Lane had never believed in coincidence, especially not after what had happened in that parking lot. His back ached constantly now, worse than before, thanks to how Officer Briggs had manhandled him that day. But pain wasn't what consumed his thoughts. It was the silence. The way no one from the department had followed up. The way the officers had just vanished after the incident. No apology. No public explanation. Just silence. But the truth was, something had shifted. Derek could feel it in the air, like a radio dial just slightly out of tune, buzzing with something waiting to break through. And it did. In the most unexpected way. It was a Thursday evening when he got the call. He was halfway through organizing his medical documents when the number flashed across the screen, unfamiliar. Normally he wouldn't pick up, but something told him to. "Mr. Lane." The voice on the other end was cautious. Professional. "This is he. My name is Kayla Monroe. I'm a private investigator, technically. But I used to work internal affairs in Franklin County. I came across something you need to see. It's about your incident with Officer Briggs." Derek's hand froze on the stack of papers. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I didn't sleep last night. Because what I saw, it's not just misconduct. It's a pattern. And you're the first person with enough evidence to expose it." She agreed to meet the next day at a local coffee shop downtown, one Derek had frequented years before his accident. He wore his cleanest button-down and made sure his wheels were dust-free. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew it was important. Kayla Monroe was younger than he expected. Early 30s, Afro-Latina, sharply dressed in a gray blazer, carrying a tablet and a fire in her eyes that couldn't be faked. She slid the tablet across the table. "Watch this." It was grainy security camera footage from a neighboring store, one neither Derek nor the police had mentioned. Different angle. Higher resolution. It captured the entire assault. Briggs wasn't just shouting. He was smiling. Taunting. He grabbed Derek by the jacket, ignoring his cries, dragging him down like dead weight. His body hit the ground with a crack. The audio was clear now. "Crystal. I said move. I don't care if you can't." Derek's jaw clenched. This wasn't submitted to anyone? Kayla shook her head. The original store owner handed it over quietly to the department. They buried it. "Why are you bringing it to me now?" "Because 2 months ago, another man, same cop, similar story, only this time, the guy ended up in the hospital with broken ribs. His case was dismissed. No one knew why. But then I found the footage and something else." She tapped again. A folder popped up on the screen. Photos. Logs. Internal memos. Officer Briggs had 5 previous complaints, all marked resolved internally. No disciplinary action. No suspensions. All of them involving black or disabled men. It wasn't misconduct. It was protected behavior. Word spread fast, not through the news but through community whisper channels, Facebook groups, WhatsApp chats, barbershops, church circles. People began to message Derek anonymously. A man in his 50s who had been tackled during a routine stop because his prosthetic leg slowed his movement. A young vet who was accused of resisting arrest after explaining his spinal cord injury. All of them told the same story: Officer Briggs, or someone just like him, ignoring medical needs and using force when none was necessary. Derek started collecting them. Each story was another brick in the wall of silence that had kept men like him pinned down. But he wasn't just collecting stories. He was planning something. "You can't go public with this," his sister warned. "You'll be attacked. Discredited." "I'm not trying to go public," Derek said. "I'm trying to make them answer for it." The idea wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about exposure. So he called a contact, a journalist named Samina Bell, who ran an independent channel on YouTube covering police brutality cases no one else would touch. She listened in silence, then said, "I want to film you telling your story. Unedited. You sure about this?" Derek nodded. "I've been silent long enough." The video went live 3 days later. It wasn't flashy. No dramatic music. Just Derek, in his wheelchair, speaking directly into the camera. He described the day. The officer. The lies. The video Kayla had uncovered. And the others, the quiet men who hadn't lived to tell theirs. Within 48 hours, the video had 1.2 million views. Not because it was trendy, but because it was real. People recognized the pain in Derek's voice. The truth in his eyes. The calculated cruelty of a system that didn't just ignore people like him, but punished them for existing. 3 days later, the department released a statement. Officer Briggs has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. It was weak. Hollow. But then came the surprise. An emergency hearing was called after the local news picked up the footage. Kayla testified. So did Derek. So did a former officer who had been quietly pushed out after trying to report Briggs years earlier. And at the end of it all, a bombshell. Officer Briggs had been protected under a departmental flagging system that categorized suspects as non-compliant risks, without medical reviews, documentation, or oversight. Derek was on that list. He never knew. None of them did. That night, as Derek rolled out of the courtroom, a man in a suit stepped beside him. "You don't know me, Mr. Lane, but I'm with the Department of Justice. And this isn't just a civil rights violation, it's a federal case now." Derek paused. His story was no longer just his. It had become the match that could burn the whole rotten foundation down. He looked up at the agent and said, "Then let's light it." Derek Lane had been many things in his life. A teacher, a mentor, a husband, a father. But that afternoon, sitting across from Maya Delgado in that quiet cafe, he realized he was something new: evidence. The coffee had gone cold. Neither of them had touched their drinks. Maya tapped the tablet again, her voice low. "This is just one of several clips I've recovered from a city traffic camera. I ran a cross-check on timestamps from the officer's report. What he wrote doesn't match this footage at all." Derek stared at the screen. There he was, on that awful day, yelling from the driver's seat, immobile, hands in plain sight. The officer, now known to him as Deputy Cole Vickers, opened the door, grabbed him by the shirt, and dragged him like dead weight onto the asphalt. "I told him I was paralyzed," Derek whispered, his voice breaking slightly. "You did. Twice." Maya nodded. "It's clear in the footage. There's no audio on this camera, but your lips, your expression, the hand signals, it's all there. And most importantly," she paused, "he never called for medical backup." Derek clenched his jaw. "I was in the hospital for 6 days. They almost had to redo the spinal rod surgery. He didn't just ignore my words, he made it worse." Maya leaned forward. "The DA hasn't seen this. But I plan to submit it with a formal complaint." The officer's body cam footage was mysteriously unavailable in the case files, but the city's surveillance grid caught more than they realized. Derek nodded, his breath catching. "What happens next?" "You have options," she said carefully. "We can take this public. Or we can take it to the Attorney General and push for an internal investigation. But know this, going public will paint a target on your back. You'll be fighting a system that protects its own." He exhaled. I've already bled for my truth. I'm not stopping now. 3 days later, a knock on Maya's apartment door. It came at 2:14 a.m. 3 short knocks. Maya woke instantly. She moved silently to the door and checked the peephole. Nothing. Then her phone buzzed. A single message. Unknown number. Careful where you dig, Miss Reporter. Her pulse spiked. Not out of fear, but recognition. They were watching. She backed away slowly and picked up her phone to call Derek. Derek didn't answer at first. His pain meds made him drowsy at night, but the second call got him. Derek, Maya said, voice tense, I just got a threat. The pause. Then, they know you're on to something. I'm not backing down, she whispered. But we need to go bigger. Derek nodded. Let's make it public. That morning, Maya published an exposé on a rapidly growing independent news blog, Justice Underground. Title: Newspaper, paralyzed black man dragged from car by officer, city suppressed the footage. The article detailed the footage, the inconsistencies in the officer's report, Derek's medical history and condition, the absence of body cam footage, and a chilling timeline showing how the city tried to bury it all. It went viral in less than 8 hours. Reddit picked it up. TikTokers made explainer videos. National blogs reposted. Celebrities retweeted. The hashtag Justice for Derek Lane trended for 2 days straight. Back at the sheriff's department, Deputy Cole Vickers was called into a meeting with Internal Affairs. His face was flush, not with guilt, but anger. You said the footage was corrupted, the investigator said. I thought it was. You also said the suspect was non-compliant. Aggressive. You didn't mention he was paralyzed. Vickers leaned back, smirking. The guy yelled a lot of things. You dragged him, Cole. Silence. Then the door opened, and in stepped the county prosecutor. Cole, we're suspending you. Effective immediately. If this escalates, we'll be recommending charges. Derek's phone buzzed again. It was Maya. They're calling a press conference. You should be there. Derek rolled up in his chair, wearing a clean dress shirt and slacks. Maya stood beside him, holding a thick envelope. Crowds gathered. Cameras clicked. News anchors adjusted mics. The district attorney approached the podium. We have launched an official inquiry into the conduct of Deputy Vickers and the systemic failures that followed. This case is more than one officer's mistake. It's a reflection of how negligence becomes normalized in our justice system. Then they invited Derek to speak. He looked into the sea of lenses and said, My name is Derek Lane. I served this community as an educator for 18 years. I've never been arrested, never broken the law. But that day, I was treated like a threat because of how I looked, and because someone assumed that sitting still meant I was defying orders. I told him I couldn't move. He didn't listen. I'm not angry anymore. I'm awake. And now, so are all of you. 1 month later, breaking news. Deputy Cole Vickers was indicted on charges of aggravated assault and civil rights violations. The sheriff's office issued a public apology. The city approved a settlement for Derek's medical bills and damages, undisclosed amount. But the real victory? The state passed Lane's Law, requiring that officers confirm medical or physical disability status before using physical force during a traffic stop. Derek sat by the window of his apartment. Outside, kids played. Laughter echoed. He turned to Maya, who sat beside him, typing another article. Think they'll remember my name? He asked softly. She smiled. They already do. He looked at the headline of her next piece. The man who couldn't stand, but still took down the system. Some victories aren't loud. They don't come with parades or medals. They come in the quiet moments, when truth cuts through silence and justice speaks where power once suppressed. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe for more untold stories. Like if you believe voices like Derek's matter. Comment below, have you ever been judged before being heard? Share this story, because truth should never be buried.